So exciting to be together for our annual J. Michael Schwartz Memorial event. This event is in memory of Yaakov Mordechai Cohen Schwartz, J. Michael Schwartz, father of our dear friend Brandon and Lisa Schwartz, and his entire family, who have chosen to name the Jewish Learning Academy after their father, and really give a huge boost to the ability of the Jewish Learning Academy to reach more and more people. And thank God, since they have stepped in to name it after their father, the Jewish Learning Academy has only grown in its reach and its impact, impacting hundreds and hundreds of people every single year through inspiration, through guidance, through enhancing marriages, through enhancing parenting, through enhancing lives in many different ways. Right now, we're in the middle of our meditation from Sinai course with 60 people enrolled, which is tremendous. And we've done 2 of the 6 classes in the course and are getting tremendous feedback on it. So this is really a great celebration and a great tribute to J. Michael Schwartz. And it is our intention and hope that we only continue to grow and expand and create this as a greater and greater tribute to him. And it's a tremendous that he has children who step up to create such a tremendous tribute for him. We're going to begin tonight with remarks from the executive director of Lubavitch of Bucks County, the senior rabbi of our shuls here in Bucks County, the one who began the Lubavitch of Bucks County and started the adult education division, which ultimately led to the Jewish Learning Academy. We'd like to ask Rabbi Yudy Shemtov to share some meaningful words with us.
You hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, good tavach, everyone. And of course, as we pay tribute to all those that made the Jewish Learning Academy and to the level that it is, we certainly can't forget our fearless leader and director of the Jewish Learning Academy, Rabbi Weinstein, who is the master of teaching and guiding, and as all the success of our Jewish Learning Academy demonstrates. So Yasher Koyach, and you should go Mechayel El Choyel, from strength to strength as we move through these challenging times. Certainly as we come out of the other end, please God, soon, we will even just go stronger and stronger. So Yasher Koyach, we're smack in the middle of the second book of the Torah, but I still think tonight we can say Chazak, Chazak, V'nis Chazek, that we should always go from strength to strength. Good tavach, everyone. Shavua Tov. And we hope that, please God, this week will be a blessed week, an inspiring week, a warm week, warmth, physical warmth. I see Arlene, you're smiling, but physical warmth, but also spiritual warmth as we move on from this beautiful Shabbos and the beautiful messages and inspiration that it gave us. Motzei Shabbos is always a good time for stories. And certain stories are just classics. And although I know I have shared this story many times, and I'm certain Rabbi Weinstein has shared this story many times, but it's a story that I think is extremely relevant for us during these times, and especially as we're meeting via Zoom, as opposed to having to the way we used to do it a few years ago, and hopefully next year we'll do it again in person. And anybody who has traveled recently will know that this story is extremely relevant for these days, because it talks about the story is a story in the mid-60s, in the late 60s. The Chabad women would have conventions every year in a different city throughout the United States. And I always remember as a child, that was the Shabbos, that my father prepared the Shabbos meals, and mommy was gone, and it was a very special Shabbos for her. This particular one took place in Detroit, and Detroit in the middle of the winter, it's not necessarily the simplest place to travel to and from. And in fact, as the group of women were traveling to Detroit, they had a wonderful convention, but they tried to get back and they got stuck at the airport. It was a terrible snowstorm. And the announcement came up on the speakers that their flight was canceled. And anybody who's been in an airport lately or has been trying to travel lately knows the kind of frustration that brings. But today, if your flight is canceled or delayed or postponed, usually you'll get an email, a text, or any other way that you signed up. But back in the 60s, you showed up to the airport, and here you have a large group of women that are ready to board their flight or anticipating to board their flight, and they're told that they're stuck and they need to get back home for Shabbos. So the organizer of this event, Mrs. Popak, dials into 770, trying to see what can be done on their end and maybe get a bracha from the Rebbe to part the skies. And she calls and tells Rabbi Klein to please inform the Rebbe that the women are stuck at the airport. There's a snowstorm. The Rabbi Klein says, I'll get back to you shortly. And he goes to the Rebbe, he comes back, he calls Mrs. Popak and says, Mrs. Popak, the Rebbe doesn't understand what the word stuck means. So she says, stuck means that we can't fly out of here. And he smiles. And those who know Rabbi Klein knows the kind of disarming smile that he had, although it was on the phone. He says, Mrs. Popak, you think the Rebbe doesn't know what the word stuck literally means? He speaks 7 languages. English is not foreign to him. What the Rebbe said is, as I eat is kein molnish stuck. In Yiddish, he said that. And translated means a Jew is never stuck. You're never stuck anywhere. If you are at an airport and the flight was canceled, there's a reason why you are there, and there's a purpose for you to fulfill while you are there. Now, there's 2 ways to look at it. Since we're stuck here anyway, might as well do something productive. But the way Chassidus teaches us, it's the other way around. You know why you're stuck? Because you aren't meant to travel, you're meant to be doing something else. And that's why God created this situation that makes you feel like you're stuck, but really you're there for a particular purpose. So Lubavitcher women are always armed with their mitzayim or their candle lighting campaign. They just came from a convention. They were very inspired. So they started reaching out to the Jewish women that were with them at the airport to inspire them to begin the lighting of the Shabbos candles. And many women have related over the years of many interesting things that developed as a result with that encounter. So the idea is that we're never stuck. The fact that we're meeting here on Zoom and it's very different and challenging, we can look at it as we have no other option, or we can look at it on the other way around. There's a reason, there's something that Hashem wants us to achieve and accomplish. And that's why he created this situation, because there's something greater that can grow out of this. And this, in fact, is a very important inspiration from this week's Parsha. We read so much about the construction of a temporary sanctuary in the desert. Now, for those who study the Parsha every week, and most of you do, the amount of what I call biblical real estate, the amount of space in the Torah that is used to talk about this particular aspect of Judaism, the Mishkan in the temple, is huge. We learn so many laws out of one little nuanced word in the Torah. Yet there's about 5 portions. In this week, the next 5 weeks, we're going to be talking about the Mishkan. Well, that's nice, but this is the point. The Mishkan was just a temporary situation. Once our temple was built in Jerusalem, we will never, ever have to build that Mishkan again. So why does the Torah spend so much on something that was very temporary, very time-related, when we'll never have to go back to that? We don't find so many things like that in the Torah. There's so much space. And this is the answer. Because although our permanent home is in Yerushalayim, is in the temple, but throughout our history, most of the time we find ourselves in temporary situations, going from one country to another country, living here and living there. So the ideal is certainly the Bais HaMikdash in Jerusalem, But the reality of our life and our history is that we're always finding ourselves in temporary situations. And here the Torah tells us that there's nothing temporary. At that moment, you have a purpose. Wherever you are, you need to construct a Mishkan. Because a Jew is never in a temporary situation. A Jew is never stuck in a situation. Every situation we're in is there for a reason, for a purpose that God orchestrated for us to build that holy temple. And the way we can really build that temple is through Torah study, through education, through helping us understand the ideals, the values, and the purpose as Torah, the light of Torah, tries to illuminate in our life. That's why JLA, the Jewish Learning Academy, is so important. As Rabbi Weinstein mentioned, the impact was not just of teaching Torah, but of enhanced relationships, parenting, and so many life skills that a Jew learns from Torah. So today we don't just celebrate all the achievements that we have engaged with in the past, all those that are on tonight that have participated or support, but how do we increase our participation, our involvement in this tremendous part of our Jewish faith, the Torah study that allows us to build those sanctuaries and to find the purpose and meaning that everything is everything in our life. And to conclude with a little nice saying, I once heard this saying, that when you are down to nothing, God is up to something. I'm going to repeat that. When you're down to nothing, God is up to something. Now, that doesn't mean when you have nothing literally. Whenever you feel stuck, whenever you feel that challenge, whenever you feel you're in that situation that you wish would be fleeting and as temporary as the Jews were in the desert, always remember God has a purpose, and that purpose is to build the holiness in your temple, the holiness of the temple in your life, in everything that you do. So good tavach, Shavua Tov, enjoy this evening, enjoy this week, and enjoy the next year of Torah study. Good tavach.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Shemtov, for those wonderful and inspiring words. And I'm excited to see that our very special guest is on with us. So we're going to jump right into our program. Chassidic Superwoman of the Courts with the Honorable Rachel E. FREIER. I'd like to share with you what some of you may have read just briefly. And I also want to say that I had the opportunity and the honor to have a conversation with Judge FREIER on Friday, and that strongly encouraged me to encourage even more people to join our program tonight, because it was a short conversation about this evening, and I found it to be very inspiring and very, very special. Judge FREIER really is exceptional in that she is a judge, and we'll learn more about that. She's also an AEMT Paramedic. That is an advanced EMT. I think most of us are familiar with an EMT, advanced EMT. Seems like everything Judge FREIER does, she does very, very well. She was elected to as a civil court judge in November of 2016 and is currently assigned to Queens County Civil Court. That's all in New York. And she was prior to becoming a judge, she maintained law offices in Borough Park in Monroe, New York. Some of you may know, I think many of you do know, both Borough Park and Monroe in New York are very Hasidic communities, and that's where she began her law practices. She went to Bais Yaakov. Many of us heard of Bais Yaakov schools for girls. And after graduating, she worked as a legal secretary and then worked her way up as a paralegal while supporting her husband, Rabbi Tzvi David FREIER, who studied Talmud in Kollel, and I will find out, I believe, is still studying, I believe, and subsequently pursued a law degree. I think it's very important to also know that Judge FREIER founded Chassidic Dvorah, which is a nonprofit charity in memory of a friend of hers who passed away at a young age. She also formed B'derech, which is a grassroots nonprofit organization advocating for education and opportunity for adolescents in the Hasidic community. And when a group of Hasidic female emergency medical technicians, EMTs, in Borough Park asked her to assist them in establishing, essentially, from my understanding, a women's Hatzalah, a women's volunteer agency, ambulance agency. She made sure that that happened, and that has mushroomed into a global grassroots volunteer agency. These are major accomplishments. They say if you want something to get done, give it to a busy person. That's the impression I'm getting over here, and I think that might be a little understatement. So it's really a great honor. Just a moment here. It's a great honor, Judge FREIER, to have you with us. Good Tavach, and thank you for being here with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, Rabbi.
It's absolutely our honor. So we're going to conduct this in the interview style, and I'm going to begin by just sharing what I really feel, that the courage that you must have mustered in order to step up in a community where it is really unheard of for a woman to be a judge. It would be very rare, I would say, also even for a woman to be a lawyer. For you to step up and find the courage to do that and be somewhat of an outlier in doing this is really what has struck me. My wife is from the Borough Park community. I'm quite familiar with it. And many of us have visited, at least, the Borough Park community. And I want to know if you can speak to us about, what you needed to muster to be able to step into the position that you're in and reach the position you're in today.
So I think a lot of it, I have to really give credit to my parents who raised us to know that even though we were very, very religious and, ultra Orthodox / Hasidic, my mother always told us we could do whatever we wanted to do. She just had 3 rules. It couldn't be illegal, immoral, or against the Torah. So my parents raised us with very, very strict Hasidic and Torah values, but they never made us feel restricted. And I also had amazing teachers in Bais Yaakov who taught us true Judaism. And true Judaism is that every person is created b'tselem Elokim, in the image of God, and every person has a purpose. Nobody was put in this world by accident. So growing up knowing that there's a purpose for me in this world just gave me the foundation to understand that if Hashem wants something to happen, it's going to happen. Now, why God created me with my DNA is a question I can't answer. It's interesting. I don't know if you've heard of the documentary film 93 Queen, but we could talk a whole hour about that documentary and why I did it and how it happened, but I don't own the film. I'm just the subject of it, as is Esras Nashim. And in that film, I make a statement that if I would have been a man, the things that I'm doing would have been so much easier. But God doesn't make mistakes. And if God created me as a woman in my community with these desires and ambitions, there's a reason for it. So I kept on saying, as long as I'm not doing anything that's illegal, immoral, or against the Torah, I am going to try. And truthfully, my husband gets a lot of credit. Because even though people say I'm the first Hasidic woman that broke all these barriers, my husband is the first Hasid who not only supported me and put up with all this, but he financed my campaign, ran around to rabbis getting endorsements for me. So I think that I was really very fortunate to have all those criteria lined up, which made it possible.
Fascinating. So in other words, as they say, behind every successful man, there's a woman kicking him under the table. Behind every successful woman, there's a man who's giving support.
100%. If we don't have the support of the men in our lives, whether it's our spouses, our fathers, our grandparents, our sons, everybody, we need each other. And that's the only way that we could survive. Whatever I did was a family project.
So was I correct as well that your husband is still studying?
My husband spends, I think, more hours learning the Talmud than some people who are on Torah full time. He also authored several books, several Svarim. So I'm very proud of him. And when we got married, that was the deal. I was going to work so he could sit and learn in Kollel and study the Talmud. But he always says it's his fault because he was studying, I was working. And I first started out as a legal secretary when I was 17 years old and graduated high school at 17. And to me, being a legal secretary, to me, that was it. I was so excited. I had a great job. I was earning fantastic money back then for a 17-year-old. And it wasn't until I turned 30, being a secretary, getting better job offers, when I started to realize that, hey, I'm working for lawyers that are younger than I am. And it made me think, like, why am I not doing what they're doing? I have the experience. If I just went to school, I could do it. But that was a very big step for me because up until that point, there really weren't college opportunities for the Hasidic community. And all that has changed now. But back then there wasn't. And one thing about us Hasidim, we're nonconformists. We just don't change. But when opportunities change, we're the first ones there. And once college opened up for the Chassidic community, I was there in those very first classes.
Where was it that the college opened up for the Hasidic community?
That was Torah College.
Torah College.
Now my kids are there. So I needed that opportunity, that bridge to go from Bais Yaakov to college and then to law school. Mm-hmm. So it was, we're going to talk for like about an hour about like 40 years of my life, like what happened, from when I went to high school, when I went to college, and by the way, Rabbi, whatever I did really very slowly. No accelerated programs, nothing quick, nothing at all. College took me 6 years. If you do the math and figure out how old I am, it's perfectly fine. But I started college at the age of 30. I had, at that point, my three sons were born. I have, Kanei Nahara, 6 children. I don't know how you say that in English, but I hope everybody understands what that means. Thank God I have 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls, just like the Brady Bunch, but one husband. So in my first semester in college, my first girl, my 4th child was born. And then by the time I graduated and started law school, my youngest, my set of twins were toddlers. And so if anybody would complain in class about homework, they just looked at me and they stopped complaining. And wow. I did it very slowly. And that really was how I was able to do it.
Fascinating. I really appreciate you sharing that you did this slowly, because sometimes when we look at someone's major achievement, like such as yours, we think we're just seeing the end result. And it's important for all of us to know that it takes time, but if you have perseverance, then you can really achieve these things.
Rabbi, and I did a lot of praying. I have my special prayer trips. I would go to Lezhensk, Poland, to pray at the holy site of Rabbi Melech of Lezhensk, and I would go to Hungary, to Keresztér, and I'd pray over there. And to Israel, I'd go to Miron every year. Of course, we had the terrible tragedy last year, but I went to all these holy prayer sites because I felt that I needed to feel that God was with me. And I still pray 3 times a day, because if I don't feel that chance to connect with God and ask him, please help me, I always add my personal prayers to help me with B'derech and Ezras Nashem. And I also learned that opposition is part of the game, Rabbi. There's a very big rabbi here in Borough Park who I consult with very often, and everybody has to have a rabbi to consult with and a rebbitzin, because you need these people to hang on, to help you hang on when things get tough. And he always gives me a lot of chizuk, words of encouragement. And he reminds me that when God blessed Abraham, God gave him the blessing, those that bless you, I will bless, and those that curse you, I will curse. And that begs the question that the commentaries ask, is that the best that God could do for Abraham? Couldn't God just say, Abraham, everyone will bless you? And the answer is no, because if you're in the public eye and you're a leader or whatever you're trying to do, if it's of a public nature, you're going to have opposition. So if Abraham had opposition, if Moses had opposition, if the Baal Shemtov had opposition, who's Ruchie FREIER?
Very well put. Although we know as well that when we're in a moment of opposition, we feel like, there's nothing else going on except my challenge. Was there ever, can you pinpoint a particular maybe fear that you had at a specific point in your journey that sticks out?
So I would perhaps give that question a little twist.
Okay.
And I wouldn't call it fear, because I would really call it maybe just like, did I feel that I was doing something that was different? Was I maybe a little like intimidated by something, but not necessarily fear. So let's say, for example, I have my Hasidic boundaries. And one of the things that was always very important for me, which is what I prayed a lot for, is like I asked God always, please help me get through my journey without compromising my Hasidic values. So, every community is different. We all come from different communities, whether you're from the Chassidic community, the Sephardic community, the Lubavitch community. There's so many different, and that's what keeps Judaism so vibrant, is that we're all so different. And God created 12 tribes, so we're all supposed to be different. So I'm very proud of my Chassidic values and traditions. And sometimes people consider our rules quite strict. But I felt that I wanted to do what I wanted to achieve without compromising these values. So for example, to give your audience an example, in the Chassidic community, men and women don't shake hands, even if it's social, for social reasons. Now, there are many people who are Orthodox who do, and they have their rabbinical guidance and their reasons why they're allowed to. But I said to myself, even though I spoke to a rabbi who said to me, it's okay, based on the fact that you're married, 6 kids, and you're going out and starting a law practice, that, if you're going to insult the person, you can shake his hand. So I remember thinking to myself, what am I going to do? I'm going to go to a closing, and I want to say, he'll be insulted. He won't, he will, he won't. So it's just not going to work for me. I'm Ruchie FREIER. My husband's a Chassid. He wears the shtreimel and the long beard. I don't shake hands with men. And God really helped me, because my first clients were all like Satmar Hasidim. If they looked me in the eye, that was considered forward. So I kind of learned to navigate myself through all these things. But, I had a real estate closing once, and everybody sitting in the conference room, they were all Hasidim, except for the bank attorney. He was Irish Catholic, but he knew my husband, who was the mortgage broker. My husband, by the way, when he's not learning Torah, he's doing commercial finance. So we're sitting at the closing, everybody's wearing black and white, all Hasidim, and the Irish Catholic bank attorney comes in, and I'll just make up a name for him because I don't want to say his real name. So Steve comes into the conference room and he starts shaking everyone's hand. And he comes to me and I said, Steve, I can't do that. So John says, oh, Rachel, I'm so sorry, I forgot. And he gives me this big hug in front of everybody. So, that was far worse than a handshake. But, you live and learn, and you also learn from your mistakes. Everyone should know that I made mistakes along my way, and I had failures along my way. And just get up. Don't beat yourself up. Get up and move on, because from your mistakes and your failures, you're going to learn lessons that will stay with you for the rest of your life.
Beautiful, beautiful. Would you consider yourself, as a woman who's outspoken, if we can say, but you surely stand out and and stand up and really represent in a unique way Jewish women? Would you consider yourself in some way to be a feminist? Do you identify that way in any way?
So that's a great question. It's a fantastic question. And in fact, when I started the women's ambulance service, I had so much opposition. I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. And one of the things that my opponents actually tried to do was characterize my mission of women's modesty and dignity in emergency medical services as a radical feminist movement. Now, for all your listeners and your audience who don't know, but the word feminism in Borough Park is a bad word. It has a very negative connotation. It kind of has the connotation of a woman who wants a man's job. And they went around saying, this project of women EMTs is part of Rachel FREIER's radical feminist agenda. And that got me a lot of publicity because all the media wanted to know who was this radical feminist. And I kept saying, I am not a feminist. And they kept saying, oh, it's about her mission for women's rights. And I said, this is not about women's rights. It happens to be that most of the time women are right, especially when it comes to our medical care. But no, it wasn't about feminism because, Rabbi, I feel that feminism, it's an ism. It's one of these social revolutions that happen in history. Now, as a religious woman, I feel that the Torah puts women on a platform. Some people look at Judaism and they'll say, well, you can't be part of a minyan, the quorum of 10 men praying. That is a discrimination. And I say, you got it wrong. When Sarah prayed, she prayed alone and her prayers went straight to heaven. So that's why when women pray, we could stay focused and our prayers go straight to heaven. Men, on the other hand, need 9 other men to help them stay focused. So it's all how you look at it. So I say Judaism gives us women the biggest responsibility. We carry Judaism to the next generation, because what determines your Judaism according to the Jewish halacha, the Jewish law, is who your mother is. So your father can be a great person, the greatest person around, but if he's not Jewish or didn't convert to Judaism, then you are not considered a Jew. So I say, well, God gives us a very, very special place in the world. So I don't consider myself a feminist in terms of Judaism, but I will say that many feminist ideals helped me get to where I am. Because 50 years ago, 100 years ago, women weren't lawyers, women weren't judges. So on the one hand, I benefited from it, but if you want to look at me as the whole person and what I stand for core Jewish values, and I am from the Hasidic community.
Fantastic. Wow. In some way, I think that's actually much harder than, joining a movement which already exists, where you're joining the bandwagon, but you're really doing something which truly is almost singular, possibly singular, and so unique as a woman in the Chassidic community. And no doubt that that's an inspiration to so many women. Can you tell us a little bit more about this this Ezras Nashim ambulance service that you created?
Sure.
And what it does, how it serves the community, how it's growing?
Sure. So I have to first rewind a little bit and explain to everybody how I got involved in community advocacy. Like, why me? I was your very average girl in Bais Yaakov High School. I wasn't GO president. I didn't run for the GO. I was really a very average girl, very average girl. In fact, when I went to my twin girls' PTA when they were in their senior year in high school, the teacher in the class looks at me and says, "Hey, Ruchie, I remember you from Bais Yaakov. I was just in your sister's class." So she says, and I said, "Oh, wow, what a coincidence." And she says to me, "Did you become a lawyer?" And I say, "Yes, I did." And then she says, "Come to think of it, I don't remember you being one of the smart girls." And she was absolutely right. I was not known as a smart girl, as a popular, I was just your average girl in class. So what happened? So I become a legal secretary to support a husband who I want to sit in co-row. And then I get the urge so I wanted to be a lawyer, but I figured it's not for me. So I encouraged my husband to go to college. I thought maybe vicariously he'll live my dream for me, but he said law school was not for him. He didn't want to do the LSATs, and he ended up doing commercial finance, and Baruch Hashem is very successful. It was at his college graduation when I said, now it's my turn, that little voice inside me was getting louder and louder, and I had to do it. So college was a step for me, but it was a Jewish college. And there were naysayers every step of the way, Rabbi. Every step, you'll never get through college. I was afraid to tell anybody that I really wanted to go to law school because everybody said it's never going to happen. If I had a nickel for every person who told me that whatever I wanted to do was never going to happen, I would fill up piggy banks and jars and penny jars. So anyhow, I get through college and I say, wow, Chasdei Hashem, this is the grace of God that helped me get to this point. Then came law school. And of course, all the naysayers, you'll never get in, you'll never get out, you'll never pass the bar exam. Anyhow, going into law school, I felt is a real jump for me. It was going into a complete secular liberal environment. And I wanted to really remain strict with my Hasidic values. And I made a deal with God. I said, dear God, help me get through law school without compromising my values. And when your children come to me for legal help, God, I will help them. So God wasted no time in testing me. Shortly after I graduated, I got involved with kids at risk in the Hasidic community, primarily adolescent boys. And I learned that these boys are not bad boys. They are making bad choices because they've been traumatized for various reasons. And then a couple of years later, I get a random phone call one night from a woman who says, we're a group of AEMTs, we're having a meeting tonight. Can you please come to our meeting? And I said, okay, this is God testing me again. I made a deal, I have to stick to my promise. So I come to this meeting and I was sure I would meet some of these like rabble rousers left-wingers. And I said, if that's the case, I'm out of there because my husband deals with enough already. So I go into this meeting and I meet the most ultra-conservative Hasidic women, the ones that make me look like I'm to the left. School principals, the ones that are really, really to the right of the Hasidic community. I was shocked. And I heard your story. Some of them had been EMTs for over 30 years because when the local Hatzalah, which is an amazing organization, they do amazing work and they save thousands of lives every year. When they were being formed in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, back in the 70s, even the 60s, there was supposed to be a women's division. And then it became political. And those women who were trained, there were 300 women that were trained. When they were just about ready to start operations, they were told, in either they say, thrown at us, ladies out, and it became an all-male organization. Now, at that point, nobody could have envisioned how many women are going to have emergency labor. At that point, it was just like, just bring oxygen and help them until the fire department comes. That's what the original intent was. So here we are. The year was about 2011, so over 10 years already. And these women were trained EMTs as well as labor coaches or doulas. And they had said to me that over time, it has become apparent that many women who have emergency labor become embarrassed and traumatized when their very well-intentioned next door neighbor comes to deliver their baby. So they wanted to see if I could help them, but even more, the reason why they were becoming more vocal, this group of women, is because at that time, the Grand Rebbe of New Square in Rockland County had just integrated women into his local Hatzalah because of this very purpose. And they said, if the rabbi in New Square did it, of course, Borough Park will do it. But no one could have envisioned the opposition. No one could have envisioned it. And I said, if I went to law school for this purpose alone, it was worth it. And Rabbi, if I tell you that if you would have told me 10 years ago that I'll be driving an ambulance and delivering babies, I would have said, go back to sleep. Now I won't say that anymore. Now, whatever God has in store for me, I say, Nasta v'nishma, I am ready, Hineni. So we got involved. When we first got started, we didn't have our ambulance. That was a 10-year battle because you have to fight to prove there's a need for it. And I just saw that ultimately, God makes things hard because the reward is that much greater. Whatever is worthwhile is going to be hard. And that's the lesson that I've learned. And I will tell everybody, whatever connects you with God, you're doing something l'shem shamayim, for the sake of God, expect challenges, embrace it, because that's what's going to make you stronger. And that's an indication that that's what God wants, right? What comes easy? Nothing comes easy.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, and a friend of mine just told me something very similar, in that anything that is a real accomplishment, you have to do on your own. No one else can do it for you. And here you took this on and made it happen. And it's now, this organization is now growing. It's moving in. It's
yeah.
grassroots.
So what happened was, we have so many requests from women from different counties, different towns, different states. But I realized that I need to take the Borough Park branch, which is the main branch, and build it up so that we're strong. Then we can go and help other places get bigger. We even had somebody a non-Jew who heard about us, donated an ambulette. He took his inheritance, his parents' house that he inherited, sold it, and brought us an ambulette. I said to him, we don't even need an ambulette. He said, no, I want you to have it. So now we're doing that service as well. And it's incredible to see the times that women just want women to help them. And it doesn't discount what the men do. It just gives that special recognition when a woman wants her fellow woman by her side. And anytime, by the way, I've become so forceful because anytime a man argues with me, I say, why do you have the right to argue with me? Keep your opinion to yourself. How can you speak for another woman?
Yeah, very true. Upholding the dignity of people. It's really, really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I think I heard or read you make a comment about when someone referred to you as a role model, that you don't see yourself as a role model.
Right. I say the term role model, especially if you're part of the ultra-Orthodox Hasidic community, you understand that there's so many different communities, so many different traditions, minhagim, so many different rules, that to say that I'm a role model would signify everybody follow me. But you can't. Even among my own family, we have different styles, different traditions. So I like to use the term trailblazer, because that signifies you can all blaze your own trail. I showed you that I could do it my way, being a Hasidic woman. Whatever your traditions are, you can find a way to be successful and blaze a trail for yourself without saying, everybody follow me. Some people will cover their hair when they get married with a wig, like I do. Some people will wear a hat. Some will wear a hat and a wig underneath. Some will wear a scarf. So every community has their own method. To say that I'm the role model would not be a true, it's an oxymoron. You can't be a role model because there's so many different communities and we're so different and we're supposed to be different.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I like trailblazer regardless, because it has a much more inspiring connotation of what is possible for someone to do, as opposed to follow me, see what you can do. You can also be a trailblazer. Yeah, it's beautiful. We spoke a lot about your interaction in the Hasidic community. When you're out there in the world, which it sounds like most of your day, that's where you are as a judge, and you're interacting with primarily non-Jews, I'm going to assume, when you're as a judge in the court. Have you ever experienced any anti-Semitism or opposition? Do people know that you're a religious woman?
So I think a Hasidic man is more obvious because of the way he dresses, and Hasidic women aren't, and especially when you're in the courthouse, as opposed to when you're outside on a summer day in the street. But I do make it a point of letting people know that I am Hasidic, and I'm very proud of it. And I always say that I have the best job, because in the courts, regardless of which courtroom I'm assigned to, in every courtroom, when I sit down, above me are the words, "In God we trust." And that always puts me into perspective. And whenever I have an issue where people are telling me, Judge, you shouldn't be doing this, or you shouldn't be doing that, I'll say, you see what it says there? I have to worry what God thinks about what I'm doing. So I interact very, very often with people who are Jewish and not observant, as well as people who aren't Jewish. And I think it's important that we all should know that whatever it is that we do observe, we have the opportunity of making a Kiddush Hashem, to sanctify God's name as Jews in whatever it is that we do. And I have learned that when you're proud of your religious values, that people will respect you for it. And often when I speak to high school girls, I always tell them, you're going to be graduating and you're going to go out to the whole wide world with many challenges. And very often your values will be challenged, but don't succumb to the temptation of giving in, because when you don't let go, the world respects you, because real people want to see real people with values. And if they see that you have values, the message you're giving to them is that you're a person of loyalty, honesty, commitment. If you're going to leave early to go light the Shabbos candles, you're sending a message. And what I've learned even more interestingly, Rabbi, is that when you show people that you have certain standards, they won't let you let go. I'll give you a typical example. When I was still legal secretary, I had the dream, I want to work in Manhattan. I was working in small borough park offices. I wanted to work in a big firm in the city. And I got a job, and it was the summertime. And I heard about, they told me about Dress Down Friday. Dress Down Friday starting. We're going to have now Friday. And I said, Dress Down Friday? What in the world is Dress Down Friday? You know what Dress Down Friday is? Well, I didn't know what Dress Down Friday was. So they explained to me that in this summertime, in the large firms, in the corporate firms, they wanted the staff to feel like they're not working so hard. So you don't have to come in your shirts and your ties. You could come dressed down. There were some rules. You couldn't come in flip-flops and shorts, but it was just dressed down. Now, I come from Borough Park. And in Borough Park, we like to dress up, not down. So every Friday I had this problem. I opened my closet. What should I wear today? Now, back then, this goes back to, I would say, like the early 90s, the way we dressed was very different. There's something that was designed. It's called a shell, S-H-E-L, and I'm wearing one right now. And it revolutionized the way religious women dress, because they come in lycra, they come in cotton, every single color. They have 3/4 length sleeves, they have long sleeves, and whatever you buy now, you just get yourself a shell and you're good to go. Whereas years ago, if you had a sleeve like this, right, and it was too short for you, you went to the dressmaker and they added a piece and you had sleeve that was considered appropriate. So as a Hasidic woman, my sleeves have to cover my elbows, right? Now, dress down Friday. Back then, I had a denim dress. I remember it was before we had shells, and I knew that my sleeves were borderline. It kind of was like this dress I'm wearing today, right? So if I raise my arm, what happens? The sleeve goes down. But if you put your arms down, you're good to go. Now I think to myself, I'm going to work in Manhattan in this large corporate law firm on Madison Avenue, Lexington Avenue. Do they really care about Ruchie FREIER sleeves? Who cares? So I wore my dress with borderline sleeves. Sitting at my computer and doing my work. And one of the attorneys I was assigned to work for, who was not observant but Jewish, comes over to me. And Sam tells me, Rachel, I see your forearms. Rabbi, when we were in Bais Yaakov, we had our modesty teachers, and they would come check and make sure that we're all dressed appropriately. None of them ever impacted me like that young lawyer. It was like a punch in my stomach. It's like his message to me was, I know you're Hasidic and I know you dress modestly, and I'm sure you don't know that your sleeves are too short. Rabbi, I came home and I threw out that dress because I realized literally I must wear my religion on my sleeve because people are looking at us. So my experience has always been just the opposite. And if someone may seem to be disrespectful, that means they don't know enough about our beautiful religion. They don't know enough about who we are. So take the time and explain it to them. And you may be surprised at the reaction that you'll get from them.
That's beautiful, beautiful. I always tell people that people respect people who respect themselves, which is really the message you just shared.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. We live in our town. We're in Newtown in Bucks County. It's a suburb of Philadelphia. And it's a very historic American town. People ask me very often if I ever experience anti-Semitism here, and they expect me to say yes, but I actually have hardly ever experienced anything here. People have been respectful and friendly. And I wonder what your experience has been out there in the world as people get to know who you are. Has it been a pretty smooth ride, or have you experienced some really rough bumps in that regard?
So I've experienced the roughest bumps from the opposition to Ezra Slushem. I wouldn't even call them bumps. I would just call them just outright shaken up, But in the outside world, I would say I've come across people who maybe were not nice to me. I don't know if it was because of my religion, because wherever you go, you're going to meet those kind of people. But I found that, again, being open about your religious values and sharing, I think really opens the doors for conversation. So I think that by just being open, owning it, and being willing to share, I think that wasn't my way of preempting anything. Like I would sit with other judges who would be wearing like crosses on their neck, and I would say, this is how I pray, and we would compare prayers. We would compare different religious values. We would share recipes for our religious things. And I also try every Friday to bring in a challah for somebody or some Shabbos, pastry. And I'll say, you're helping me by accommodating my leaving early. I want to share my Shabbos with you. So I find that instead of some people try to blend in. Let's be like everybody else. And they think that's going to kind of, preempt any anti-Semitism. And I have been just the opposite. It's like, hey, I'm out there, I'm here. You come to my chambers, you'll see pictures of my kids with the long side curls, the long payas. You very quickly get the understanding where I come from, and that I'm so proud of it, and I'm willing to share without being apologetic.
Yeah, very nice. I know with my wife's challahs, I can open up many doors that nothing else will open up.
That's right.
Yeah.
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I had another very interesting story. I have so many stories. I don't know which one to say first, but when I became a judge, I had a lot of requests for interviews. And at one point I said, okay, Dayenu, it's enough. I can't do the interviews. It's time really just to get busy with my work. I always felt that if something was an opportunity to sanctify God's name and Kiddush Hashem, I'll do the interview. So I was sitting at the table one night and I told my kids, I got this interview request from somebody with the name of Megan Kelly. I have no idea who this person is, but I said no. And my son said, Ma, she's a very famous TV reporter, and she did, the election interviews. This goes back years ago. I think you should do it. So my sister said to me, Ruchie, why don't you go online and see what those interviews are like, and then decide if you want to do it. So I went online and I saw that years ago, when you used to watch the news on TV, news reporters had a certain professional look. Today, it's very different. Today, they have to dress like models and they're just talking the news. So what was my concern? My concern was, I know that whenever I do interviews and it goes viral, then all the Hasidim watch me on those interviews, right? They get the clips, it goes around. And when I had started at Hashem years before, I had an interview by one of these news outlets, and it was a hot summer day, and I was very unprepared for the TV reporter who came with a red dress, which in Borough Park we would call a long shirt. And that went viral, and I felt that I was like the proximate cause of all these Hasidic people who were watching me being interviewed by a woman who wasn't dressed appropriately. And of course, it wasn't anything that I could control, but I figured I need at least make an attempt. So I was speaking to the host at the Megan Kelly show, and I agreed to do it. And they wanted everything. They wanted to interview me in my house, in my courtroom, in my chambers. And I said, okay, fine, you can come. You're going to come to my house on a Friday, Erev Shabbos Hanukkah, the busiest Friday of the year. And you're going to see me rushing to light the Shabbos candles, and you'll see my husband rushing to light the Hanukkah menorah candle. And you're going to see that there's symmetry in Judaism. And if we have time, you'll get a piece of my potato kugel. And then they came to my chambers. Now, at one point, I took the producer on the side. I said to her, Mary, I want to ask you a favor. I said, I have a feeling that this is going to go viral. And when it goes viral, it really means a lot to me that people are dressed appropriately. And she understood exactly what I was saying, Rabbi. She says to me, Rachel, you want me to ask Megan to dress conservatively? I said, please, I appreciate it so much. So they interviewed me, and the big day came. It was like going to the White House. They picked me up in a stretched limo at like 5 o'clock in the morning. And then my mother and my son came along with me, and we come to Rockefeller Center, and even the court had security to come escort me. And then we went to all different rooms. And then I said, okay, now we're going to come and do your makeup. I said, makeup, hold on a second, only a woman makeup artist. Okay, only a woman. I said, my hair, I wear a wig, and my mom does my wig. Okay, it's great that your mom come. We always want to learn how to do wigs. Then they put me into like the green room. Anybody else goes into the studio. And I'm watching from the green room a video screen of the interviews before me. And I see there is Megan dressed like she always dresses, like your typical TV show host. And I said, God, Hashem, I tried. I did my hishtadlos, I made my effort. What could I do? Then after a couple of interviews before me, they usher me in, it's my turn. And the studio doors open up and the crowd starts cheering. And there is Megan Kelly dressed in a long sleeve turtleneck and a navy blue skirt, just like we wore in Bais Yaakov. I didn't realize that she changes between interviews. And I realized, you know what? If you share with people your values, you'll be surprised what respect you'll get. Don't be intimidated. Don't be embarrassed. Be proud of what we represent, because the real world respects it.
So that's fantastic. Great. That's a great story. Sometimes when we're moving forward in life, and so sometimes we feel that we approach things in somewhat of a harsh way. In other words, despite the fact that I am this type of a person, or I hold up these values, I'm still going to push forward and accomplish something that is not really, that doesn't naturally flow with that. And sometimes we're not doing things in spite of, but we find a way of doing it because of it. It almost becomes an outcome of who we are. Do you understand what I mean by that? And I wonder, like, in this journey of yours, and there are always challenges, and then there's always inspiration. And did you feel that your journey was, like, in spite of the fact that you're a Hasidic woman, you were able to achieve this? Or do you feel this is an outcome in many respects of who you are that gave you the power to achieve this?
So I think it's a combination of both. I think in some respects, it was part of, like, my DNA that I had this desire to do something. And then as challenges came my way, I found that I was, like, pushed sometimes to react. And then I think also a big part of the picture also is being a mother. So sometimes people have ambitions and it's just their journey. But truthfully, by me, it wasn't just me, because everything that I do, it has a ripple effect on my husband and my children. So whatever it is that I had to do, I had to always think to myself, well, how is it going to affect my children? And interestingly enough, I married off my 6 children while doing all of this. Everybody had said, you'll never be able to do a shidduch, right? To find a match for your child. And now, I don't know about people who are watching this, but if you live in my circles, marrying off your children is very, very important, and something that we do as parents. And everybody always thinks, I'm not going to do this because of shidduchim. I won't do this. And they all ask me, like, Ruchie, how'd you manage? And I'll tell you how I managed. So when things were getting, like, really volatile, when I was starting as Ras Nashim, my husband said, okay, Ruchie, this is too much already. What are we going to do now? I'm like, what's going to be with shidduchim? And I said to my husband, I said, see, David, we both pray 3 times a day. We pray to the same God, right? Now, we believe that we're praying to God, who's an all-knowing God, who created the world. And God controls the world, right? So if God can make sure that the sun rises and sets every day at the right time, and he never asked me for help, he never asked you for help. So if God can take care of that, can't he take care of our children getting married? And when you kind of put that into perspective, it becomes comical. Like, what do you think? Because I'm doing a mitzvah of helping women, I'm not going to be able to marry off my children? And thank God, I mean, I have the most lovely in-laws. You couldn't have picked better ones. But people have to always realize and put things into perspective. I always like to talk about Reb Zisha. The famous story of Reb Zisha. Reb Zisha is one of the earliest Hasidic rabbis, right? And he's on his deathbed and he's crying. And his students ask him, Rabbi, why are you crying? Such a holy rabbi, you're going to go straight to Gan Eden, straight to heaven. And he says, I'm not crying because they're going to ask me up in heaven, Zisha, why weren't you like Moses? I'm not crying because they're going to ask me, Zisha, why weren't you like King David? I'm crying because they're going to ask me, Zisha, why weren't you like Zisha could have been, right? Do we know what our potential is? We place our own self-imposed limitations on what we can do for various reasons, various challenges, various struggles. We all have them. But truthfully, we don't know what we can accomplish with God's help. We just have to ask God to help. And then we could accomplish so much. And I'm sure what all the Chabad rabbis do, all what your Rebbitzins do, I look at and say, how do you do it? How do you go to a neighborhood where there are no Jews and just pitch your tent and then start? It amazes me, it inspires me. So you don't realize it because that's your life.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Especially, I want to just emphasize, what you said about you need to change your perspective, and the perspective that you gave of the God who ensures that the sun rises and sun sets. If he can handle that, he can handle, our taking care of our lives, and that's exactly what happens. That's fantastic. Someone actually submitted a question, and I want to share. If anyone has a specific question, you can put it in the chat box. They want to know, they're curious about whether you advise, and especially on the heels of that great story with Rav Zisha, are you living up to who you are? Do you encourage your daughters to also get a professional career?
So that really depends. Every child is, they say, I raise my children by the book. Each kid a different book. Everyone has to know their children. So out of my 6 children, 2 did go to college. 2 did. And the ones who don't want to go, whether they want to do business, they want to do something else, or just stay home, be a stay-at-home mom. So for everybody, whatever it is that's going to give them satisfaction and contentment, if you want to do it, I'm there to help you. And if it's not for you, then it's not for you. I made my decision to go to college when I was 30. So I think it's great if they want to, and I help them. And if they don't want to, whatever it is that they want to do, I would try my best to help them.
Beautiful. Just a moment here. Yeah, it's interesting because as a rabbi also, people always ask me whether my son is going to be a rabbi, or do you want your son to be a rabbi? And I always tell them I want my son to be my son. And however that's going to evolve, I want him to be who he truly is. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You have any tips for mothers on how to juggle motherhood and such a consuming career with side projects going on?
So I always quote my mother, who is my best friend and the smartest woman that I know. When my first child was born, I was going to go back to work. Says Ruchie, make sure you have good help. Get yourself less pairs of shoes, less jewelry, less wigs, but get yourself help. And for all the men out there who don't think their wives need help, please, women need help to run the house. And there's no reason, it's no indication of failure. You need help, get yourself the help that you need. That's most important. And then also when it comes to making, dinners, I love to cook, but I have a 20-minute rule. If it takes more than 20 minutes, it's not on the menu for during the week. Over the weekend, you have more time, different story. But cut corners. You don't have to spend hours doing things. 70321B. Hold on one second. That is my emergency radio.
You just need to unmute yourself. All right. So you really are an AEMT.
I really am. I just don't understand why they don't know that I'm off for 5 more minutes.
All right, just a moment, everyone. Wow, gets us here in action. We have a great question here that just came in, which I'm going to pose in a moment. And we just have 5 more minutes. So if anyone has any other questions, you can send them in. And following the talk, we're going to be drawing the winning raffle tickets. So hang tight, everyone, after we're done. Okay.
Hi, everybody. Sorry about that.
No, we love seeing you in action. We love seeing the real action.
Yeah, there is a call going on, but actually, I'm just let them all know that we have 3 members that are responding to the call right now.
Great. Yeah. So no, you gave some great tips over there about the balance of career and motherhood. And it's great to also hear that you get tips from your mom, which usually a mother is the best source of guidance and advice. Someone's asking, has the judge presided over a case where Torah law differed from secular law? And if so, how did you handle that?
So that's a fantastic question. And so I'll answer that question as follows. I am a judge in a secular court, in civil court. I'm not a judge in a Bais Din. So I am presiding over secular law. And when a case comes in front of me, it's right? That's the law that I have to follow. The only time that there is a question that people would question the law is if two observant Jews are in front of me. And then the question would be, why aren't they in a Jewish Bais Din as opposed to coming to meet in court? And then you just go with the Malchus Adina. But I never had an issue where there was a problem. But if there would be a problem where I would feel that I have to compromise my values, at that point, I would just recuse myself. And there are often times when judges have to recuse themselves. And so during those times when a judge recuses himself or herself, someone else will step in. And that's just the way it's done. It happens often that you could be either related to a litigant or a former employer or a former employee, and you have to recuse yourself. So for me, the Torah values have always been a foundation, a stepping stone. Pirkei Avos is so completely with advice for judges about being patient, being deliberate in judgment, not jumping to conclusions. So my Torah values have never been a contradiction or a hindrance. And if there ever would be a case where I would feel compromised, I am supposed to recuse myself.
It practically doesn't really come up a conflict because you are judging by the law of the land. You're not a rabbinic court, and you don't foresee that or envision that conflict would actually happen, do you?
No, I don't think so. Yeah. And again, if it would, I would have to just recuse myself.
Yeah, fantastic. This was excellent. Thank you so much for giving us your time to share with our community. This is a real inspiration to our community of showing how an individual, in your case in particular, a woman can stand by her values and very strongly, and at the same time reach great heights in success and achievement and influence in the world. So thank you for sharing all of these messages with us, and we wish you continued success. And we look forward to seeing what you're going to be achieving in the future.
Thank you so much. Have a Shavua Tov, a good Tov, everybody.
Thank you so much.